Hey, good morning, America. I think I'm about to give up on this, trying to teach people about mass shooters. Nobody's interested. We say we are, but they'd rather listen to people who are just full of conjecture and nonsense. I am by no means the expert, but I am an expert. If you don't listen to some of my videos and gather that, then there's nothing I can do for you. I know the mind of violence. I know what it takes to creep toward an act of extreme violence where people get hurt. Let's look into this life of this elusive, the junior mass shooter. I'm sorry, my heart's just not in it anymore. I'm just wore out with it. Nobody's, no views on my, which is fine. I've been doing it for 14 years. It's like being in love with somebody that doesn't love you, I guess. Wah. Wah. But anyway, so now all of a sudden he's come through the summer of his sophomore to junior year. He's matured in his emotions. He has found purpose. Remember that word, purpose. He hasn't found identity yet. He hasn't identified yet with a mass shooter, but he's found purpose for his life, whereby the things that ailed him and troubled him, even if he wasn't an abused child, there's something there that has pushed him. And I think a lot of it, if not most of it, is just a tendency to repeat and emulate the, somebody flashing their lights, which means the police are up here. Somebody that is emulating the last mass shooter. So that's what I really believe is happening. Is that they're just carbon copying the mechanics of the last shooter. Now, it's not the police, it's a road crew picking up trash, inmates getting out early in the morning. God, they love to get out and do this stuff. What's up, guys? What's up, y'all? You gonna get out one day and be free, man? So anyway, this junior mass shooter now has purpose. He's come through all that. He's found healing in his mind. Remember now, all this is still taking place in the imaginations of his mind. This is why the elusiveness of this stuff is just so beyond us, because it's the eliteness, the elusiveness of a human mind, how smart they are, that they can stay off the radar and under the radar because they act normal. So in his elusiveness and in his finding purpose, he's now able to somewhat fight back, even if it's just emotionally. I'm not taking this anymore. I'm not going to stand there and take the abuse anymore. He's either outgrown his attacker, if that's the case, or he's just grown up physically and as well as mentally and emotionally. He's got a little bit of backbone in it, so he's not taking it anymore. He's found purpose in that and solace in the fact that he can fight back to a degree. Maybe not fist fight emotionally, but he can stand his ground a little bit and just tell the world and tell life until I'm not. And what helps him along, what he gets comfort and motivation from, is when he hears about the last mass shooter. You gotta remember, mass shooters only been around roughly the last 30 years. Since Columbine. Columbine was 1999, so 2000, so 23 years, roughly. I'm sure my math is messed up. I never was a math prodigy. So that most of the, if not a lot, 2/3 of the shooters that are on scene were born after Klebold and Harris, were born after Columbine. So they've grown up with these things. Just like I grew up hearing about the Vietnam War. Well, these guys have grown up hearing about mass shooters. And every time this one pops up on scene, they hear about him. They hear about all the tragedies of his life, and they can relate to it. And so now they haven't got to the point. They'll do that in their senior year. When they graduate during the summer into the senior year of a mass shooter's journey, that's when they'll have identity. That's when they begin to identify. Right now, the purpose is that they're just listening to this. They're just hearing this stuff. It's comforting. It's good to know that, hey, these guys fought back. These guys fought back to the point where they made their own statement, and it gives them comfort. He hasn't quite been able to metamorphose to the point where he can latch onto that and say, hey, I'm going to be the next mass shooter and show the world, make a statement through my violence. He hasn't got to that. He hasn't seen it like that. But it's coming. This whole journey is a process of the metamorphosis. Now, in the midst of all of this, purpose, where the metamorphosis comes to where he begins to see himself as the next mass shooter is where somewhere, and we just haven't figured out where or how, somewhere after he's had that idea to kill, that he's had that taste for violence prior in his life, even if it was just to dronings on about the last mass shooter been able to grab comfort from. Somewhere along that line, he has a seed of violence placed into the soil of his mind. And in this seed is all the blueprint that will be needed, that when it comes to fruition, will be all he needs in his mind mentally to accomplish an act of extreme violence of forethought, to the point of walking into an unprotected target and killing in mass, killing a crowd of 30 plus people, shooting it up, just wreaking havoc. Now, this guy has just got purpose now. He's got purpose in his life. Now he has purpose. Now he's starting to see things different. Now he's starting to understand things differently. He's starting to hear things differently. When they talk about mass shooters, it's not just somebody on the other side of the world. It's somebody he can relate to, almost like a relative. It's somebody that when they begin to drone on about little Bobby and the reasons for, and the supposedly there's no motive for this. Reporters, stop. We think y'all think the first one to find motive solves the case. There is no motive. There is no motive because it's a journey. The sooner you get that in your head that it's a journey to this place of extreme violence, the more then you'll have success. So they try to find motive, they can't find motive. So this guy has found purpose. He's listening to all the dronings on. He's finally began to see himself solving his problems mentally, identifying with this mass shooter, and somewhere along this journey, we don't know where it takes place. I haven't been able to quite figure out when that seed, it could even be as far back as the crib, but that seed of extreme violence is all that he will need. All that he will need is in that blueprint of that seed. Everything that he will need to perform this act of extreme violence is in that seed that gets planted into the soil of his mind. If you want more in-depth teaching on this, go to YouTube search, type in "Why Shooters Kill," a lesson on violence, and one of those videos teaches you about the seed of violence that gets planted into the mind, into the soil of people's minds, and grows to fruition until the fruit is just unbearable on the vine, and then they have to harvest it. What we're seeing now is a season of harvest of this fruit in people's lives. All right, that's enough for now. I'll pick it right back up.